Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
Have you ever wished you could know what the future held before you got there? What if you were given the gift of knowledge before you even began your journey? Now, I've been thinking about that because I made a lot of stupid mistakes when I was younger. And I wish I had someone to say, don't go down that road, go down this one. I'm Sherry, and welcome to From the Eyes of Wisdom, where we are pairing an experienced elder from CRISTA Senior Living with a passionate King's High School student ready to launch into the world. And while these conversations won't tell the future exactly, they did reveal a lot we weren't expecting about how to live life well. Are you ready? I can't wait for you to hear this. I am so excited to have two beautiful young women in front of me here, Carolyn and Jessie, right?
Yep.
And both of you are artists. Carolyn has been an artist her whole life. Jessie is a senior in high school. Yeah. And so we hope to pass on some wisdom from Carolyn and her path of being an artist to you as you are a up-and-coming artist. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. Mm-hmm. All right, Carolyn, you have lived an exciting life.
Yes, I have.
Yes, do you feel that? Do you feel like, you know what?
I do know.
You know that.
God has blessed me.
Yeah.
I do know that.
Do you feel young still? You look great.
Sometimes.
Okay.
But I'm 90. So,
You're what?
I have a long past.
You look gorgeous.
Well, thank you. That's all the Lord then.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you sometimes feel young, sometimes not so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I get tired easily.
Yeah.
And I don't do some of the things that I used to do.
Okay.
But it's fun to reminisce about the things that I did when I was younger.
Well, that's what we're going to do now. Yeah. Now, this is some of your art.
Yes.
On the podcast, you can't see it. Sorry, guys, but it's wonderful. Can you show Jessie just a little bit of some of the stuff you did? Wow. And is that drawing just freehand? Just drawing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pencil?
It was done in ink. Almost all the work that I did was done in ink because it was going to be printed.
Oh.
But what I started with, when I was 3 years old, I began drawing because I had an uncle who was an editor of photography on the New York Daily News.
Oh, wow.
And he encouraged me and my sister, both of us actually did things with art. But from the time we were little, he kind of singled us out from all the young nieces and nephews that he had and gave us things all through every Christmas, every birthday with something.
Encouraging that gift.
Exactly.
And how old were you? Three.
And I could have been a little younger. There was nothing much in the Depression to draw on. And one time my dad tried to cash a check and he realized that I had been drawing something on the back of the check. Getting paper, pencils, ink there was just not much of it. So I would scrounge, and I used to draw even on grocery sacks that were then just like we have the paper ones now that are kind of mauve color or brownish.
So you had a passion for it when you were young.
I was little.
When you were little. Wow. So your uncle sees this and he's encouraging that passion.
Encourage it.
Do you remember when you felt like, I think I love this. I think I can be an artist. How old were you, do you think?
I don't think I remember. But
really? Does it feel like it's always been here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in the Depression, you wouldn't be able to go and get a notebook necessarily. There wasn't a lot to draw on.
To buy anything with paper to draw on was unusual. There might not have been right in New York City, where I was actually born. But after my dad left the job in New York and went into the northern New Jersey, there just weren't stores that had art supplies. Now there are all over the country, but then there wasn't.
Do you remember the first thing you drew?
No. Well, we drew paper dolls, my sister and I. Aww. We didn't have a lot of money, and it was fun. We could draw someone, and the people that we were drawing a lot of was Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret Rose from Great Britain. Because living on the East Coast, we got a lot of news from Great Britain. Yeah. But you have to, as an artist, too. You see things differently. And people used to say, well, you're so observant. Well, you need to be, because that's what the images that you're putting in your head that you can sometimes put down on paper.
Do you feel like you see things differently, Jessie?
Like when I'm creating art,
Yeah.
when I'm like working with my whatever I'm working on, yeah, I feel that too.
What do you like to work with the most, like when you're creating?
Well, I really like just paper and pencil. 'Cause
Okay.
it's just easiest, you know.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to work more with acrylic and canvas.
Okay. How's that going?
It's fun. I really like it.
Okay. So is art your goal?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, for
that's what
sure.
you want to do. You want to work in art. Do you
Yeah.
know in what capacity? I want to be a digital artist. I want to be.
That's something that I'm still trying to figure out. I
Okay.
really like digital too. So I hope to just go to college and major in art and then figure stuff
out as you try things.
yeah.
Now, Carolyn, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, you have this passion for art as a child.
Yeah.
Your uncle is encouraging it. And then when did we have an accident with your hand?
That was in college, 2 weeks before I graduated. I had taken classes that I didn't need to take because I had all of the points that I needed to graduate. So I thought, well, I'll take a class in jewelry making. That would be kind of fun. Well, I made a bracelet out of silver, and the teacher walked away and was gone. And I thought, well, this is ridiculous to stay around. I have no idea when she's coming back. School's getting over, so everybody's kind of lax, like a daisical, doing what they have to do to graduate. Well, I decided I'd polish it, so I did not mount it on a board as I knew I was supposed to do. And my hand had a terrible accident.
Oh no.
And it was actually ruined. And
I'm so sorry.
Well, it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
I couldn't even understand. I was still thinking young. I was not a very sophisticated 21-year-old, and I thought my life is over. I will not get my job. I can't do anything.
I was going to ask, how did that impact how you see yourself? Because I'm guessing if you love art at 3 and that's your passion, then all the way up to 21, that's it. It's art. Like, I love radio. I love audio. So that was my thing. I didn't have any other thing. So it's the equivalent to me of if at 21, and I know I'm going to get, that's exactly right. I know I'm going to get this job with Oprah, and I'm going to follow Oprah, and then I lose my voice.
Oh no.
That's exactly.
So it impacts your self.
First thing the doctor at Syracuse University at the hospital said was, "I hope you're not a pianist." And I said, "Well, I used to play the piano."
Yeah.
But it wasn't that.
It was the art.
It was the art. And to tell my parents over the phone that I'd had this massive accident, I did not graduate with my class at that time. I waited until much later because I wanted to graduate with him. I was supposed to graduate in January, and so I waited until June when I had finally had some surgery. In fact, the man that operated was the very first hand specialist in the United States.
Wow.
He was very famous, and Mother saw an article in the Saturday Evening Post that he was taking patients in New York, and so we lived just a few minutes outside of New York. And so we went in, and he picked up my hand, which was about like that, and said, "I can fix that."
See, the reason why I love things like that, and I'd love for you, Jessie, to just consider this through life, is that God has little appointments. He's kind and he's watching, right?
Remember, I wasn't a Christian.
I know, but
I was not a believer.
But he still
then.
knows, and he's watching. And
I know.
Yeah.
It was still, I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
So I was truly miserable.
So you're not a believer. Wow.
No.
You're not a believer. So tell me, so at that point, are you get, at some point you get married?
And neither were my parents, and neither was my husband-to-be.
Okay.
So my husband that I'd met at Syracuse and dated him, but wasn't terribly serious. Somehow his parents lived close to where my parents were. So here I am walking wounded, and we started dating again. Then he went into the Army and was gone for 19 months, but we corresponded. And I guess in those days it wasn't too awkward. We were engaged through the mail. We moved from New Jersey and New York City area to Oregon, to Vernonia, Oregon, in a little town with wooden sidewalks.
And you're still suffering from your hand
trauma.
and trauma. Trauma is a good word.
It was still hurting. I'd often be caught just holding my hand and
so I want you to kind of think just like, what if, God forbid, tomorrow you can't do art?
It's just oh wow, that'd be horrible.
Yeah, so that's where she's at, right? And now you can't do art, and now you're moved all the way from your family, right? Yes, everything that you knew.
I didn't know a soul on the West Coast.
Tell us what your life was like out there, because you can't do art, right? Am I right? You're not drawing yet.
But they did need an art teacher in that little school. We were transferred to Nia Bay.
I don't know what that is.
Nia Bay is the farthest west that you can go on the Olympic Peninsula. Yeah,
Tell me what your mindset is there.
In between, I did teach at Oregon State University in oil painting, which was nice too, and had another little job while Eric was getting his master's degree.
Okay, so let me ask this. Would you ever consider maybe it's teaching? Is that something you could have a passion for, or do you think I'd rather just do the art? Do you think teaching?
I would love to teach too.
Yeah, teach art?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
that'll be fun.
That's a blessing for you then, because to do that and pass it on. And I had one student who went on to be really not famous and rich, but he went on to work for Walt Disney and loved it and would write to me every year and call me teach. And I was able to go and talk to his parents to get them to keep him from staying on the farm in Vernonia, Oregon, and let him go to Chenard, which was in L.A., and I don't know whether Chenard is still there, but it was a wonderful art school and probably the best one on the West Coast at that time. You never know.
All right, so teaching is
who's going to help you or who you will help, and it is a blessing to be able to do that.
I love that. So let's talk about your spiritual journey. So from New York to one city in Oregon and all the way far as west you can get, still not a believer.
State of Washington.
How do you intersect with God? What did he set up to get your attention?
I had 2 children.
Okay.
Both born while we were out in the Wild West.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, there is a little church in Clallam Bay, so I'll take the kids there and they can go to Sunday school, because I'd gone to Sunday school as a child.
Okay.
But obviously it didn't do much good. So I started taking them, and without fail, the woman that was the pastor's wife would come out, and I was sitting reading a Time magazine, and I'd taken garbage to the dump because we didn't have any garbage service at Sail River Camp in Nia Bay.
Okay.
So I would say, "Oh, no, thank you."
Oh, when the pastor's wife would come?
Oh, yeah. It'd come out every Sunday and say, "Would you like to come inside?" And I would say, "No, thanks."
Yeah.
Well, one day a woman came to our door and she said, "There's a new Bible study at this little church, and I know your children go there. I'd like to have you come with me." And I said, "I'm not interested."
No, thank you.
So she came again about a week later, and I thought, this is odd. And I said, "No, thank you," probably forcefully.
Yeah.
And again, probably thinking things I shouldn't. And she came a 3rd time.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, wait a minute. Her husband is my husband's boss. And I had this horrible feeling that he might lose his job, and our marriage was just teetering anyway because I was miserable. It was awful. So I thought, yes, I better go. So then I started looking in our house for a Bible, and I said, well, every home in America has a Bible.
All right.
Well, we didn't. So I drove almost 82 miles over this windy road to Port Angeles. Fortunately, they had a Bible bookstore, and I went in just practically in tears and said, "Oh my gosh, I have to have a Bible." But I said, I don't want to pay very much for it because I'm not going to use it that often, but it's to save my husband's job.
Right.
And I'm sure this woman behind the counter went, "Oh, wow.
We got a hot one here."
Yeah. So she said, "Well, how much do you want to pay?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Maybe just a medium price Bible. I don't know what their cost." She said to me, "Would $8.99 be acceptable?" And I said, "Well, maybe." And I guess, and thinking about it, and she said, "Which version do you want?" And I thought, there's more than one version.
What version did you end up getting? You get the King James?
Well, I asked her which one was more acceptable.
Okay.
She said the King James.
Right.
So I now have that Bible, and when I give my testimony, it's held together with electrician's
You
tape.
still have it?
Wow.
Oh, my goodness,
couldn't
I
let
love
it
that.
go because I met the Lord while we were studying the Gospel of John, and it was such a shock to find that there was somebody who knew what I was going through and loved me and cared about me. And I was really on the brink of just going out into the straits of Wanda Fuca and not coming back. It was a hard time.
How did your life start changing? You come to the Lord. What are the changes you started seeing?
I started singing.
Really?
Wow.
And had a beautiful voice. And I've had some surgery, so I can't sing the way I used to. But I'd stand in the kitchen and I'd watch these eagles out in the trees, and I thought, that's God's creation out there.
Yeah.
Where I'd never even looked at what things were going on outside of me.
Yeah.
And the ships going by in the Straits of Wanda Fuca were beautiful, and got to meet some of the people from the church and joined this Bible study that I wasn't going to go to unless I had to.
Yeah.
And it was a big change.
Okay. So, Jessie, tell me a little bit about your spiritual journey or your relationship with the Lord. Just a little bit. You don't have to go.
Okay. Well, like I came into King's in 6th grade. At that time, none of my parents or family members were Christians, so it was very new to me having Bible class and like Christian teachers and friends.
So how do you get to a Christian school if none of your family is Christian?
So my parents' friends.
Okay.
Yeah, their kid
Okay.
went to King's, so that's how I came here.
Okay.
But it was just very new to me. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And like now I've been King's for 7 years, 8 years. And I think my relationship with God just kind of like slowly just grew over time.
All right. So Carolyn, let's go to how do you start creating again?
Okay, well, I was teaching in the high school and the grade school in the little town. It was very little. And didn't enjoy it too much because I was the free period for all the other teachers. So they really didn't care what resources I had or what equipment I had. So I was a little unhappy, and I got involved in some politics, and I met one of the people that was very instrumental in getting Governor Evans to run for governor.
Okay.
And he had built a new little building in Longview, Washington, and he said, I know that you have done some interesting things. I'm sure I did a few little drawings. I don't really recall what it was or haven't kept any of it. But he said, I have a balcony and I'm going to give it to you free. Why don't you come and start your own business? And I thought, well, maybe this is a chance to do it. This is what I trained for at Syracuse.
Yeah.
And thought, well, maybe I can do that. Because as an illustrator, I was going to be doing ads for stores like Saks Fifth Avenue and Bergdorf Goodman. And I thought, well, maybe I can really get a job. And he promoted me so much that people started coming. And one of the first things that I started doing was working with the YMCA.
And those of you who are
And they
listening
were
via
doing
podcast,
some new...
people listening via podcast, I want them to know we're looking at some of your original art, which is absolutely amazing.
Well, they hired me to do some drawings and working with the Department of Education for the nation. This woman was in Longview, Washington.
Wow.
And so I was illustrating her books that she was writing on how to include people with disabilities and mainstream them. That was called mainstreaming back then.
Okay.
And so we became really good friends.
Yeah.
And I think she came to know the Lord. Hopefully, because I was so still on fire for the Lord.
Yeah.
And I always said he's the one that did everything.
Let's talk about you have this little studio now, right?
Yes.
And you're drawing for people. And how do you begin to do? Because when I was reading your story, I had no idea. Are you in the Girl Scouts? Have you ever done Girl Scouts, Jessie?
No.
Okay. I didn't know Girl Scouts had a calendar.
They didn't.
They didn't.
Well, actually, they had 8 million printed in in Nevada someplace
Okay.
by a printer, and they were all generic colored pictures of scenery around the country. They had nothing to do with Girl Scouts, except that at the bottom of it said that was a Girl Scout calendar.
Were any pictures of girls or anything? It was just random things?
One of the men I started working with was the publisher of the newspaper in Longview, Washington. Here again, the Lord's opening a door. And he said, I have an idea because my daughter is a Girl Scout and this calendar is ridiculous. He said, why don't you do something? You can do a calendar and we'll make it just for our council here, which was the Pacific Peaks. And I said, well, I'd have to have some pictures of people. So they gave me, a lot of them were Polaroids, which are a little hard to see people's faces, but we did a prospectus for the Pacific Peaks Council in Olympia at that time. And they loved it. And so they didn't buy the calendars from the Girl Scouts.
Oh, they took your calendar.
They took our calendar and sold it. Well, then other people began to see it, and pretty soon we had Girl Scout councils from all up and down the coast, Pacific coast, saying, hey, come down. So the publisher and I would go down and talk to people, and while they were talking business, I was drawing them from their faces of the people that managed that council.
Now, let me ask you this, because Jessie, in your interview, I read, you said one of the things you would like some guidance or wisdom about overall is how not to get distracted. Am I right?
Yes,
Can you give me a little more about like that question?
So like, I guess just not get distracting. So like, I do sports and I'm a high school student. So like finals and just overall, there's a lot of distractions. And sometimes I'll just tell myself, okay, just you're gonna go home. You don't have any homework today. Like make art.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll get distracted, you know, I'll chat with my sisters. So like, how do you like kind of like push yourself to like, keep creating art on your free time?
I was older, of course, with my girls were in college by the time I got to doing the Girl Scout calendars. I started with these calendars in 73.
Let's say you're not making anything for anybody. Would you just kind of create? Would you just kind of draw?
Sometimes I do.
Because I think that's what you're talking about too, right? Like, do you just create?
So like do you think like having deadlines
helps?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's also scary.
Yeah.
Because you can't make mistakes. Although I don't think it's quite as hard when you're doing them for publishing. If you do mess up something, you can white it out. When you're doing an original pen and ink drawing, which I did, house portraits, I called them, which are hanging in some of them in the lobby down at Cristwood Park right now, those you couldn't make a mistake because there's no way to white it out without people knowing that you've done something wrong. And I was dipping the pens into India ink and bringing them onto a page. So the fear always was what you would drop a drop of ink.
I can't. My hand would have been shaking with everything. I just would have been like, oh my gosh, I would have just been. I'd have been on edge.
It was a gift. It was a gift from God. I knew
like
that.
A gift.
And I knew that He was helping me do it because
you can see it.
Otherwise, in today's world, when you're working on a computer, I think you can. It's forgiving. These were not. They really had to be done pretty doggone well.
All right, I'm gonna give you this. Take that, Jessie. I'm handing her an index card, handing her a pen. Okay. Yeah. If you have one piece of advice, she's gonna take that index card to college. She's gonna she'll be 45 years old and look at me like I remember what Carolyn said to me.
Well, what would that
one for her
always
life?
Give the Lord the first part of doing any project. Tell Him that you want His help in doing it because He's the master creator. He created the world and all of these incredible things that we see. And He has that power to help you if you ask. And then when you do work for people, be sure that you try to cooperate. Everybody that I ever worked with, especially after I was a believer in being paid for things, I wanted them to know that I would do anything to try to get what was in their head that they envisioned that they wanted to put out to the public about their businesses or their whatever it was they were trying to sell to the public, that I would do my best to bring that from them. And as a result, I became friends with some, and I know some of them became Christians. So your life can have a huge impact on so many people. And so you'll have joy as you get older and no regrets.
No regrets.
And it's just a wonderful way to live. I wouldn't go back and live the way the first 30 years of my life were for anything. Even though he was there all the time, but I used his name in vain. I was a nasty sinner. And to be forgiven for those and to be given a gift, to do something that I loved to do and couldn't do on my own was incredible.
I love
so
that.
So give him that honor and glory.
Right
and
from
he
the start.
loves you. I can tell how much he loves you, and I can tell you love him too.
Yes,
People sometimes said to me, we can see Jesus in you. And I do see Jesus in you. And it's a blessing. So.
Carolyn, thank you.
Thank
I
you
honor
so much.
And I see Jesus in you too, my dear.
You, and I
Thank
honor
you.
your life. I honor a life well lived. I love to see people who have lived a full life with Christ, ups, downs, lefts, right. You've experienced the fullness of his faithfulness.
Yes,
and
really,
I love that.
Truly, I have.
We got to wrap up, guys. Thank you so much. I want you to write, he's the master creator. You said
Yes,
that.
I did.
You wrote that down. He's the
I
master
got that
creator.
down.
I'm going to write it down for myself. I love that. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Carolyn, thank you. Jessie, thank you. And we will see you next time on the next episode. This has been really, really good stuff.